Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Practical Pet Chat. Lorin, my pet isn't eating. Is all too often where it stops. That was an intentional dramatic pause, folks, because I wanted to bring everybody into something that Lorin and I hear from our vet friends as they're really struggling to get people to communicate. And so a little bit of a dramatic pause, dramatic statement. But I really thought we'd take some time because communication is so important across the board, especially when you're talking about medical concerns.
Well, it isn't just vet friends. It is vet friends too, because they tend to reserve the, instruction of, well, I need better information. Um, but people do it to me in the group too. They ask me a question and it's like, oh, okay. How old is your dog? When did this start? What are you feeding? What other signs did you see? Is there any change in the poop? Is the stomach gurgling? And it's not just eating, but it's any question that you're going to ask for help on from anybody, whether it's a vet or anybody else. This is like you being the translator for somebody who doesn't speak the language, and you would think, well, you're in the pet industry or it's a vet, they should speak the language. They're not mind readers and they don't see what you see. So they need information. If you want to get a good diagnosis, a right diagnosis, and you want to get thorough information, you have to provide information because you have to paint the picture for the person that you're asking help from. So giving abstract information because you hone it down to specifically what is bothering you, which is in this particular case, your kid isn't eating. There's so much more information that the person you're asking help from needs. And you need to give complete information, age, what normal looks like, how many times a day do you feed, when did you first notice it, did you notice it, did you change anything, was there anything different in the diet, was there any behavior that was different, did they go outside like normal, are they listless, are their gums pink, what is their overall behavior, are they withdrawn, are they hiding, and I could go on for probably a good couple more minutes of information that I need, but it's a start, right? So
Right.
that once you give me that information, I can kind of guide the additional questions that I have. Okay, that's helpful. That kind of starts to paint that picture. Now I need, this area over here painted. So let me ask you some questions on that. But to just abstractly give something, and I don't know what it is about that white coat for a lot of pet parents, whether it's a medical doctor or a veterinarian, there's something about that white coat that they lock up and, they can come to me or you and they can after the fact and we can extrapolate because we know these people, but they lock up with the vet and they're not forthcoming, they're not thorough. A lot of times too, they'll wander in the information. So, it's like, oh, and it's so funny. He last time this happened, okay, what last time? Tell me about last time. How long ago was last time? Give me some play-by-play on that. Oh, you know what he really likes? Bananas. Let me pull you back over into,
Sure.
focus here. Because unless bananas are going to be a test food to see if he's off, then, would trust you've already tried that. So let's get back over here. It's all over the map. It's pretty funny sometimes, but it's also very concerning because when somebody is really desperately in need of help, and sometimes they've asked four or five other people, right? So now it's them taking it down to the finite question, which again, for a new person, we still need more information. And please don't think your vets are going to be able to read the dog's mind or the cat's mind. They need you to tell them to speak for your animal. Speak for your animal. Tell them what's going on.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up, I don't know what it is about the white coat. I think I know what it is. It's just that natural fear of being judged. And I think when someone comes in real fast, real hard, real like, let's get this done, it's just another jarring like I've got to be perfect, succinct, and sometimes folks are just not ready to be that way. So I love that we're talking about this because hopefully it eases your concerns a little bit of here's what's going on. Take the breath, right? You and I talk about this all the time of just
Mhm.
have grace for yourself, okay? Because just like a human medical doctor comes in, they've got a finite amount of time, they're going from one room to the next room to the next room and trying to assess in a very quick manner, and that can be pretty off-putting, right? Because this is a very important being. And the only area where I'll deviate a little bit from you is you're not translating because your pet can't tell you, they're just giving you signs that have caused this concern in many cases. And so being able to succinctly do that, I think is more challenging, especially whether it's, in a vet's office or a medical situation. I do agree with you. It is interesting. The I've experienced it myself where I'm there, I know the one vet and we switch vets in the middle of an appointment for, whatever reason, and I just have a better interaction with one than the other. And it's just they're both qualified, it's just something throws off that energy and the communication scale. So if you see that happening, you got to take a beat and say, let me take you back, because without being able to give the history, and in many cases we feel rushed with, it's like, oh my gosh, I know you got 20 pets sitting in the waiting room and all the rest of that, blah, blah, blah. Take a breath. Right now the focus is your cherished being. And that means you're going to give the best info you can to get the best outcome. Because at the end of it, that's really what you and I are talking about is the best info gets the best outcomes. The more you can share, now they don't need a novel version, but the more you
Right.
can share as to why is this a concern? Now, obviously, if there's bleeding or bumps, that's much easier to be succinct with and focused on. But there is that background because I've seen a lot of medical charts, I've seen a lot of vet charts. There's just not the same amount of detail quite often in the vet charts that there is in the medical charts. You're able to communicate human to human. The pet to human translation still takes some time. So I think that's important. The other thing too is the vet's trying to get in there quickly and they're trying to assess, what do I need to do? Do we need to run tests? Do we do? And it's like, I some of the most brilliant vets I've ever been around are they've got amazing minds. They are not warm, fuzzy
Hmm.
communicators. And that has been probably one of the most difficult parts of the pet world that I have experienced throughout my time in the pet world is, even though this is such a compassionate space, and the pet world is to me all about compassion, for whatever reason when we get into that vet space we lose some of the compassion. I can certainly speculate as to why, but that doesn't mean that we as the pet parent have to squash that ourselves. And I see that molding of, oh, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to. No, 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 no. You're here for a reason. You're paying just like everybody else. Let's make sure what's getting done needs to be done as well. I can remember even having questions about titer testing back in the day, and I'd go get the titer test,
Hmm.
and it was like, well, we just recommend. That's great. You recommend it. It's not what I.
Yeah.
You've got to, be confident, be comfortable, and, have some forethought sometimes into, okay, if this is a scheduled visit, what is my goal? What's my outcome for my pet? Um, because, you can get, kind of rush through these things and it just never seems to meet the expectation either, because that's the other part of this that I hear is the frustration after the fact,
It is, yeah,
and it's like, well, as I'm listening to you explain what went on, it sounds like you both just didn't communicate. Uh,
right.
the dog was sitting there in the corner going, you think I'm squirrelish, boy, the two of you are,
So if you know that, then, the perfect thing to do is to make a list. I mean, I even like I had a dental done on one of my dogs by a specialist because of her size, and there was a board certified anesthesiologist there at the same time. And I required a meeting beforehand. Had all my questions. I had a list, the things that I wanted to be sure were covered, the things that I didn't want to happen. I didn't want any NSAIDs given, things like that. So, when you get in the middle of it and you start talking, it's easy to lose track of the things you wanted to mention. So go in with a list. But if you're going to the vet and you have just the thing of, well, my dog's not eating. Okay, the thing to do would be like something like this. The last time my dog ate was at 9 o'clock yesterday morning. Okay, now I don't really give treats, but I gave her a treat at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She didn't seem real interested. Well, did she eat it? No, she didn't. She didn't eat it, and she really wasn't interested. She just sort of laid around and really didn't do anything. Tried to feed her last night at about 7. Again, she didn't. She didn't even come to the bowl to take a look at it. And I took her out last night at 10 o'clock, and she did her business and came back in and just laid down in her bed. Is she drinking water? She is drinking water. How many times is she drinking water? Her normal amount, or it's the think about if you're looking at the animal and you have to relay that to the vet, you have to again give that information. I don't know that they do it or that every vet does it anymore, but the veterinary emergency room when I lived in California, there was a particular vet there that I really liked a great deal. And the vet techs there they would chart an animal that was there overnight where depending on the situation, 30 minutes or an hour, they would go in and take a look at the animal, write down anything that they see. Um, Typically what you're looking for is QAR, which is quiet, alert, responsive, right? And so when I would get the report, I would run down all the times to look to see where the QARs were, and if they were consistent. And it's almost when you're a pet parent, you have to be that observant. You have to watch because, you're right, they're not communicating verbally. So you have to look for subtle signs. You have to look for the tells so that you can relay them because you know your kid better than anybody. The vet certainly doesn't. They know animals. They don't know your particular kid. So you need to be able to tell them the things that are abnormal and unusual for how your kid is behaving. And I think that you need to your point, and I've mentioned this quite often over the years in my group, um, they don't have any problem when you go up to the front desk giving you the bill. So don't have any problem asking for what you're there to pay for, which is help. And if you don't feel like you got succinct answers, if you don't feel like you really know what's going on, I've had situations where I've asked the vet 3 or 4 different ways um, the same question because I'm making sure that the answer is either going to be consistent or that they really understand what I'm asking here. And don't be rushed and just tell them that. Say, listen, if you need to go see somebody else and come back to me, I'll wait.
right, right. Yeah,
You know,
and I think the other thing too is don't fear the judgment. That if you miss something, hey, just let them know that, because that's the other part too, where I'll, ask, and someone will say, well, I think I may have missed, one, but I was right back on track. Oh, did you tell the vet that? Well, no, because I was right back on track. Okay, but missing that may have been the blip that triggered something else.
Right.
And they would much rather hear, okay, I'm not doing this that you told me to do, or I am doing that I told you. It's like your regular doctor,
Hmm.
hey, no, no soda for a month. Well, I had an event, I had soda. No one's going to be doing that. And if they are, they're not the right vet or, caretaker in my book. So, I think that's important as well when you're there and you're getting the information. I like that you said too, hey, if you've got to take care of something else that's more pressing, I completely understand that can happen. I'll be here when you get back and we'll wait because I want this done right. And what's really interesting is sometimes folks, they're just trying to speed through because that's also what they're seeing in their waiting room. People don't want to wait. They don't want to share a lot of info. They just want to get through this. It's no different. I just had Bella groomed recently, and I love that you said this isn't just a vet situation. This is everything. And we're standing there, and everybody's keeping their distance because we all got our dogs. And I'm listening to one of the people ahead of us, and she's like, "So what do you want done?" I don't know, just whatever you do, just groomer, as if that was a one word describes every pattern of everything that's done for every single pet that these folks groom. And it was interesting because she was very patient, and she had that same kind of walkthrough that you do. Okay, listen, there's several things we can do here. Well, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? And she had to build that profile for that particular pet while all the rest of us were waiting. The interesting part was the pet parent wanted to get out of there quickly. And I guarantee you, had she not taken that approach of this or that, when that pet parent showed up later on in the day, that pet parent would have been angry because somehow through osmosis, the groomer didn't,
Hmm.
get the information she needed. So, and I just, it was interesting because, and I've known this groomer for a long time. So I was just like, wow, that was a master class in dealing with a person who not only is not giving the proper amount of time, but no instruction whatsoever. And so I think
And
it,
that's the first client to get angry,
yeah,
really angry at
yeah,
pickup.
yeah, and so it's not worth it for anybody. And it's interesting too because her frustration, the pet parent's frustration, was in all of our opinion that were standing there, including Bella. Bella was very judgmental. I will say I was a little bit thrown by Bella's judgmentalness, but we were all kind of going, this is a you thing. This is nobody else. We're all fine waiting for you to tell her how you want Fluffy to be groomed. How do you want Fluffy? Like, it wasn't like you're inconveniencing everybody. So just do it. That's not an answer ever. And especially whether it's a vet, whether it's a groomer, in any of these situations, you've really got to know and express what you want for your, four-legged friend or your feathered friend, etc. Hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I may not know how to get there, but at least if I have a clear picture that I can share, and or here's what's going on. Again, that picture of, as you pointed out, what did you do? What made you even think it's out of the ordinary? Those things pop up in all of these interactions. And you know what? You're right. We are not just the translator, but we are that interpreter for our pets. In this is how I'm interpreting that. You know, I may be right, I may be wrong, but this is what I'm seeing. Okay, good.
But guess what? That's what medicine is too. Maybe right, maybe wrong. I
That's why
mean,
it's a
all
practice.
medicine, yeah, it's all practice. And the thing about medicine, people expect definitive definitive diagnoses and definitive fixes. And it just doesn't come down to that. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, to be perfectly honest, one meal being missed, I wouldn't have even had any concern. I would have been asking the other questions of, well, tell me what you're seeing and behavior and all that, because this might just be skip a meal. I got an upset tummy. I need to skip a meal. Um, as opposed to having to rush to the vet. But it's very much a medicine is about educated guesses, right? Based on information
Yeah.
and experience, based on information and experience. So it's one of the reasons why you want to look at the experience of whoever it is you're communicating with, vet, or any animal person that you're asking for help from. What's their experience level? How long have they been practicing their trade? How long have they been in the industry? How well do they know what they're talking about? For example, one of my dearest friends is a vet, and I tried to talk him into doing a knee surgery on one of my dogs, and he's like, nope. And I was like, well, and I said, what do you mean no? And he goes, because I don't do those. And I said,
The
but we're
content of this
friends.
podcast is
He
for
goes,
informational
yep.
purposes
And
only.
I want to
It
keep
is
it
not
that way.
intended as, nor should it be
And
construed
I
as,
was like, but
professional
it's
medical
me.
advice,
And he
diagnosis,
goes,
or treatment
yep.
for your
And
pets.
he goes,
Always seek
listen,
the advice of a qualified
I don't
veterinarian
do
with any
these.
questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical
Like, I
condition.
don't ever
Never
do
disregard
these.
professional
It's not
veterinary
like
advice
I've
or
done
delay in seeking it because of something
9,000
you have heard
spay
on
and
this
neuters,
podcast. The hosts
It's like
and the
I
guests
never
of this
do these
podcast are not
particular
liable for any
surgeries.
actions taken
So
based
I'm
on the
not the
information
guy for
shared during
you,
these
which I
episodes.
absolutely
Any reliance
loved
on the
him
information
for.
provided is
But
solely at your
I
own risk.
tried a little further. Well,
Copyright
I trust you.
2025 Practical Pet
Yep, and
Chat.
you
All
trust me
rights
to do the
reserved.
right thing by you.
Unauthorized
So
duplication,
not doing it.
distribution, or reproduction of
Yeah.
any content of this
And
Here's the
podcast,
too,
including
right?
but not
You
limited to
trusted
audio,
him
scripts,
even
and show
more
notes, is
after
prohibited
he
without prior written
communicated
consent.
that to
The
you in
opinions
that
and views
way,
expressed by the host
rather
and
than
guests
just
are their
going, I'll
own
take
and
care
do
of
not necessarily reflect the
right.
views of Practical
Yeah,
Pet Chat.
and that's what I want out of somebody. I want somebody to know their limitations. It doesn't make me think less of them because all of us have limitations. We all have things that we excel at and other things that we're like, maybe that's not my gig. But it has to be okay for you to put the question out there and for you to be okay with the answer. You have to make the person you're asking feel comfortable with, I get it. I may not be your thing. Do you have somebody you can refer me to?
right? I love that as a transitional. If I'm not getting anywhere with that, whether whatever vet, groomer, etc., maybe this isn't the right connection for us. Here's what I'm looking for. Is there someone else here or elsewhere you might want me to go, to find that answer that I'm looking for? Because sometimes that is what it takes. Sometimes philosophies change. I went to an integrative vet office for a long time who was very open and welcoming about the herbs that I was using from South America and so forth. And they brought in a different vet, and that vet we just did not sync up in how we do things, in part because they just weren't familiar with that. And I had to say that exact thing. So when you said that, it just really triggered me right back to that moment of, you know, I understand, there's a transition because so and so is retiring. Is there something I can do to help with our interactions because I'm not moving away from what I know works for my animals? Maybe this isn't the right fit if I'm going to continue doing that.
But
To
see,
wait,
here's the thing, your
yeah,
tone, that's the way you do that.
yeah. Tone
Too
is so important.
often
Yeah,
people are, and some of it comes from being worried and things like that, but people go in and they're demanding and they're angry and, they're insistent and they elevate their tone and they get sort of, aggressive in their position and everybody around them is just like,
yeah,
they just want them out of the office because they don't, right away, everybody thinks, I'm never going to make this person happy because I'm really not sure what's going on. So It's okay for people not to fit. It's okay for somebody not to have an answer. It's okay. You're going to have a better relationship regardless of whether or not you continue. You're going to have a better relationship in that space of in time if you're just bring it down, take a breath, be calm, and be cognizant of the fact this is another human being on the other side of you, on the other side of that table, who is under stress as well, and maybe is a little bit unsure of what exactly you want or what you need or how we're going to proceed or what are you looking for because maybe you're not communicating it right. Just, grace is the key here, and that shouldn't lessen your advocacy for your animal, but it doesn't have to be an aggressive attack.
Yeah, and keep in mind, our animals feed off of our energy.
Oof.
They're looking at us, they're watching us, so they pick up on that right away. That trust factor for whoever we're talking to, and that, hey, I've
Right.
got to defend mom and dad. And speaking of demanding, please feel free to send us your emails to practicalpetchat@gmail.com. And don't worry, we demand that Lorin reads all those and Rob does not. But we are always happy to hear what your experiences are, what your thoughts are. How do you handle these things in different situations? And if you're one of those practitioners, how do you suggest folks address it better? Maybe you've got something that you use that you want to share with all of our folks out there. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for joining us here on another Practical Pet Chat. It is always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.